Chris Mannix been covering the NBA for 20 years. So tonight, KD and the Suns, I can't wait for it. I was saying this earlier, that Westbrook and Kyrie have defined games, strong opinions. Throwing them into a team at the trading deadline could be a little problematic. KD feels different. He works with everybody. God, he was working with Ben Simmons earlier this year before he got hurt. I think the Suns will be great. I think they'll be great immediately. You sat down with their new owner recently. What do you project we'll see from this Phoenix offense now?
Well, it will be prolific, and they're going to have some nights where they score 130, 140 points, maybe somewhat easily. My concern is who are the defenders on this team in the aftermath of Mikal Bridges being traded away. I know people have pointed to Kevin Durant and his defense, and he is a solid defender, but Paul, Booker, Durant, this is not a great defensive team. So you got to get stops in the playoffs to win games. That's part of it. The depth on this team, they're bringing in buyout guys. Never in the history of the NBA, Colin, has a team been successful just bringing in buyout guys to be part of the rotation. You need to flesh out that rotation with pieces that fit, with guys that make sense, not guys that are just available for certain reasons in the buyout market. And the greatest concern of them all, you've got three guys that are your stars that all have pretty significant history of injuries. Chris Paul seems to get hurt every single time we get to key moments in the playoffs. Kevin Durant has been hurt in each of the last couple of years. And not to mention the Achilles injury. And Devin Booker's coming off the most significant injury of his career in this season. I don't think it's crazy to think that this team might wind up dealing with an injury issue at some point before the end of the season. And if they do, they just don't have the chemistry or the depth to overcome something like that.
So the Warriors now on a little bit of a winning streak. I talked earlier about it took them a while to bridge young and old. And now DiVincenzo gives them leadership off the bench. Poole gives them scoring. Kuminga gives them athletic ability. He's a very good athlete. JaMychal Green gives them some size. It feels like they've kind of figured out, with four different guys, they've kind of figured out the bench. That's what it looked like to me last night, what it's looked like for the last couple of weeks. Your takeaway on the Warriors, by the way, Clay is having his best year in a long time. Your takeaway on the Warriors, are they just kind of sitting in the weeds?
They're sitting in the weeds, but I need to see more of this revitalized second unit to believe that it's sustainable. That's been their big problem throughout the course of this entire season. They haven't had reliable guys coming off the bench. The starting lineup is great. The numbers back that up. Defensively, they can still get it done with that smaller lineup, but they have not had reliable guys. And look, before the trade deadline, Warriors officials were telling people privately, we know we can't win without some kind of significant upgrade to the bench. Maybe Gary Payton turns out to be that guy. He's been a reliable guy for them in the past. He's someone that knows the system and someone that Steve Kerr can trust, but I need to see it from Jonathan Kuminga. I need to see more of it from Jordan Poole. I need to see more to believe that these guys in a tough postseason series are going to be the kind of players Steve Kerr can lean on, or is he going to have to really extend his starting lineups to minutes he doesn't want to in order to stay in some of these games?
You know the Celtics as well as anybody, and I've said this. I was talking about this yesterday. I said there's an interesting team. You can argue that Marcus Smart's the soul of the team. Jaylen Brown's the best athlete. Robert Williams is the most valuable defensive player because he's a rim protector. He gave Warriors fits last year, and Jason Tatum's the best basketball player. And they have a new coach, and it's a different feel. I feel like the Warriors have been, Draymond and Steph are the soul of the team. And I feel like I kind of know everything cinches together. And when I watch the Celtics in sometimes close games, situationally, half court, I feel like they're still kind of sometimes trying to figure it out. You watch them a lot more than I do. What do you make? Now the Bucks have added shot makers, veteran shot makers. Does Boston have enough? Where are you on the Celtics today?
I think the Celtics are great. I do. I don't think they have any problems whatsoever. I think they're comfortable with each other with that rotation. I think Tatum and Brown have learned how to play off each other. I think Malcolm Brogdon has been exactly what this team is looking for. I think going into the postseason, probably the biggest question is, how does Joe Mazzulla, the young head coach, handle it? He is going to have to match wits with some elite head coaches when he gets deep in the playoffs. Guys like Mike Budenholzer, Doc Rivers, I mean, top-level guys that he's going to have to go up against. Maybe he can do it, but Joe's had some iffy moments with his rotations. He seems to have gone to the Phil Jackson school of never calling timeouts. There's given you some reason for concern about the postseason. That's number one. Number two, if you ask people in Boston, the team they fear the most in both conferences, it's Milwaukee. That's why the Celtics were aggressively involved in the talks to get San Antonio's Jakob Poeltl to the team. They were willing to give up a first-round pick in exchange for Jakob Poeltl. The Spurs ultimately went the Raptors' direction. They go out, they get Mike Muscala, but they know in Boston that they are one bad landing from Robert Williams away.
That's right.
From having to over-rely on Al Horford, who's 36, to have to lean on Luke Cornett, who's unproven, to have to use a Mike Muscala. And then you look at the Bucks, their strength is their strength. They've got Giannis in that front court, Brook Lopez in that front court, Bobby Portis in that front court. The Celtics, that makes them very, very nervous. If Robert Williams is healthy and able to go 35 minutes, they feel confident they can win. They will win a series against Milwaukee at home or on the road. But that's the team that scares them the most, because that size can give Boston problems.
Finally, I have grown up with Ali. Marketing is a big deal in pay-per-view. It drives tickets. I grew up with Don King and Bob Arum, and then, you hand off to Conor McGregor. I understand it. Wrestling, boxing, UFC, it can be pay-per-view. I get it. I'm not uncomfortable with Jake Paul. I did say this, though, and you've been covering boxing a long time, is that I once in Connecticut saw a Doors cover band. I love the Doors. And they were fantastic. But I wouldn't follow them around the country like I would follow, years ago, U2, or friends would follow Pearl Jam. They were a knockoff band. And when I saw Jake Paul against the real boxer, albeit a limited one, he's not as refined, he's not as polished. He's just not. He's a tough kid with a great story, works his butt off, and I'm happy for him. And my takeaway is I don't need to buy his pay-per-view stuff anymore, but I love the story. As somebody who officially covers it and has great respect inside the industry, what was your takeaway on his narrative, his story, and his fight against Tommy Fury?
Let's start here. I love what Jake Paul has brought to boxing. Whatever you think of his talent level, he is a compelling character, and he's involving himself in compelling fights, which is not what you can say about boxing, at least not on a consistent basis. As far as the real boxing goes, Jake Paul has also done a phenomenal job elevating real boxers. Amanda Serrano is a far bigger name now because she fought on Jake Paul's undercards. Montana Love got a long-term contract with a real promoter because he fought on Jake Paul's undercards. Look at this most recent fight. Badu Jack, who probably nobody outside the hardcore boxing audience has ever heard of, is now a cruiserweight champion at 39 years old because, in part, he was fighting on these Jake Paul undercards. So he has elevated the guys around him. Now, is Jake Paul ever going to be a world champion? Of course not. Could he beat Tommy Fury in the rematch? Yeah, I think he could. It was a close enough fight that I could see him winning a rematch. But that doesn't matter. All Jake Paul has to do, Colin, is continue to be in compelling fights. We don't care about world titles in boxing. We don't care about weight divisions of boxing. We care about compelling matchups. And Jake Paul, later in the year, if he fights someone like Nate Diaz, I'll buy it. I'm in. I'll watch that. If he fights at the end of the year, someone like KSI, who's another YouTuber who's talked a lot of trash, who has a win over his brother Logan, I'll watch that. Sign me up for that. Just give me something that is compelling. The boxing purists out there, many of them who listen to my podcast, who I love, but they're so blind to all this. They say, don't watch Jake Paul. Jake Paul is stupid. Now, turn around and pay $75 for some crap that somebody's going to put on pay-per-view tomorrow. Like, that's their solution.
Yeah.
Just have real boxers fighting on pay-per-view. Jake Paul is compelling. As long as he's in compelling fights, I will be there to watch them and talk about them every single time.
Chris Mannix, as always, buddy, great stuff. Thanks, man. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.